It started with a ticket. A bright orange slap in the face, stuck to the windshield like a scarlet letter. Jason had barely taken a step outside his townhouse that morning when he saw it. His heart sank before he even touched it. He knew what it was. Expired tags. The same tags he hadn't been able to update in over a year. Not because he was lazy. Not because he didn't care. But because the car had been hit by a drunk driver last spring. And after months of saving up and scraping by, he was finally close to getting it inspected. A couple more weeks, and the repairs would be done. New parts were already sitting in his garage. May was the finish line. But now, a parking ticket. On a quiet cul-de-sac. On a weekday morning. He looked around, confused. There wasn't a single patrol car in sight. No tow truck. No officer nearby. And that's when he heard the sound. Click. He turned. There she was. Standing less than 10 feet away. Karen. He didn't know her name, no one really did. She just appeared sometimes. Clutching a clipboard, lips curled like she was chewing on something sour. A permanent frown carved into her face like it was part of the HOA handbook. She smiled. No warmth in it. Just satisfaction. You're lucky that's all you got, she said, gesturing to the ticket. I've filed 3 complaints. That eyesore's been sitting here for months. Jason blinked. Are you serious? Karen didn't even flinch. This is a private community. We have standards. He looked at his car. Yeah, the back was dented. Yeah, the paint was scraped. But it ran. And it was legal to park. And most importantly, it was his. I've been working on fixing it, he said, voice calm. It was hit by a drunk driver. I'm almost done. I've got an inspection scheduled next month. Karen shrugged. Then maybe you should fix it faster. Or get a car that doesn't embarrass the neighborhood. That was it. Jason snapped. Oh, he said, stepping forward. So you're the one who called it in. Karen's smug smile widened. I'm the head of HOA compliance, sweetheart. It's my job. Jason took a deep breath. It's not your job to report a car for expired tags parked in someone's driveway. It's parked on city property. She shot back. I checked the line. I measured it. I know the law. He almost laughed. She had measured the curb. Who does that? Karen leaned in a little. Be grateful you just got a ticket. We could fine you for that bumper. It's hideous. He stared at her. You're unbelievable. She straightened her clipboard like it was a badge of honor. Maybe you should respect the rules like everyone else. Jason didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Because now he had a court date. And whether she liked it or not, so did her little report. Jason didn't live in a luxury gated community. It was a modest HOA neighborhood tucked in a quiet corner of the suburbs. Rows of attached townhomes, manicured patches of grass between them, and that all-too-familiar beige color palette HOA boards seemed to worship. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful, at least, it used to be. Jason had moved there 3 years ago. Bought the place with every penny he'd saved from working HVAC jobs and summer heat waves that could melt steel. It wasn't much, but it was his. A 2-bedroom starter home, perfect for a single guy who wanted space and silence. Then the accident happened. A year ago, a drunk driver slammed into Jason's parked car on a rainy night. Rear bumper crushed. Taillights shattered. Alignment thrown. The insurance barely covered a third of the repair cost. He patched what he could. Borrowed tools from coworkers. Watched hours of YouTube tutorials. Fixed the axle himself, then replaced the tail light. But the bumper? That wasn't cheap. And he didn't have thousands to spare. So he worked overtime. Skipped vacations. Ate ramen. By April, the car ran fine. But he still hadn't passed inspection. Without that, no new registration. No updated tags. Still, the car was parked legally. Tucked in the same corner of the court where it had always been. Not blocking anything. Not leaking. Just ugly. At least in Karen's eyes. The HOA rules were vague. Jason had read them front to back after the ticket. There was nothing about expired tags parked in private driveways. Nothing about cosmetic damage. But Karen had a way of bending rules when she didn't like what she saw. This wasn't the first time she'd made life miserable for someone. There was Mrs. Chen 2 doors down, who got a warning for having a hummingbird feeder too close to the walkway. And the Diaz family, who got fined because their son left a basketball net up overnight. She once wrote up a retired veteran for hanging a flag at the wrong height ratio. Karen thrived on technicalities. And she always carried that same clipboard, as if she were the sheriff of some HOA Wild West. Jason tried to let it go. He focused on finishing the bumper work. Ordered a used one from out of state. Took time off to install it himself. But something about her attitude, about the way she smiled when she dropped that ticket bomb on his car, kept replaying in his head. So when the court date came, Jason didn't show up stressed. He showed up prepared. He brought every invoice. Every receipt. A printed photo timeline of the repairs. He even had a mechanic's note explaining why the car wouldn't pass inspection with the bumper damage. What he didn't expect was what happened next. Because sitting behind the bench that day was a city judge who'd clearly seen one too many petty HOA complaints. The moment Jason explained the timeline, the judge leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "You mean to tell me," he said, "that someone called in your car for expired tags while it was parked, not moving, and clearly under repair?" Jason nodded. "And you had proof of that repair in progress?" Jason held up the folder. "Right here." The judge took it. Flipped through the papers. Raised an eyebrow. Then he sighed, loudly. "Son," he said, "I'm going to grant you an extension until the end of May. Get the inspection done, get your tags updated, and you're good." Jason felt relief rush through him. But then came the twist. Because the judge wasn't done. He looked toward the corner of the room, where a city parking enforcement officer sat stiffly. And with a deadpan voice, he said, "I'm going to have a word with the city about how tickets like these are being written. This is a complete waste of my time, and this gentleman's time. You're supposed to be enforcing safety, not petty neighborhood squabbles." Jason nearly laughed. He didn't. But the smug satisfaction on his face was hard to miss. Jason didn't rush out of the courthouse. He walked. Deliberately. With the judge's words still echoing in his head like music. He didn't just win, he got validation. And more than that, Karen's petty crusade had been publicly humiliated. But Jason wasn't done yet. Not until he delivered the message where it would sting the most. He drove straight home. Pulled into the exact same spot where his car had been ticketed. Let the engine idle for a moment, just to enjoy the silence. Then, slowly, he walked up the path and made a sharp turn toward the house 3 doors down. Karen's house. She was outside, of course. Like always. Wearing gardening gloves but not touching a single plant. Just standing there, arms folded, pretending she wasn't waiting. Jason raised the folded paper in his hand, the dropped citation with the judge's signature on it, and waved it like a flag. "I thought you'd want to see this," he said. Karen narrowed her eyes. "What's that?" "The ticket," Jason replied, smiling. "Dismissed. Judge gave me an extension. Called it, his words, not mine, a complete waste of time." She blinked. Just once. The muscles in her jaw clenched. "Well," she snapped, "you still broke the law. You're lucky they didn't tow it. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood clean." Jason nodded slowly, deliberately. "Yeah, I'm sure. You think this is funny?" "I think justice is funny," he said, his tone calm, but sharp. "I think people using HOA power to harass their neighbors over a cosmetic dent is funny. I think calling in a city ticket for a car that was being repaired is hilarious." Karen's voice rose. "You're disrespecting the HOA. This community has standards." "Standards?" he echoed. "You mean like writing up veterans for hanging flags wrong?" Or fining a family because their kid left a toy in the yard overnight? Her face turned crimson. I know the rules, she hissed. I enforce them. Jason took a step forward, not threatening, just unshakable. You mean you twist them? And the judge saw right through it. Karen was silent. Jason let the moment hang in the air. Then he turned around and walked away. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to slam doors. He just let her stew in silence. But she wasn't done. Because petty people never are. That afternoon, Jason got a letter in his mailbox. Hand-delivered. HOA stationery. Folded too tightly, as if shoved in out of frustration. It read, Your vehicle remains in violation of HOA policy regarding aesthetic standards. You have 7 days to either relocate the vehicle out of view or be subject to community fines. This warning is final. He laughed out loud. She was doubling down. But this time, she'd gone too far. Jason pulled out his phone. Scrolled through his email until he found what he was looking for. The HOA charter. And guess what? Nowhere did it say a car with a dented bumper violated any written rule. Especially when legally parked. And that's when Jason had an idea. He didn't just want to beat Karen. He wanted to expose her. Jason wasn't a lawyer. But he wasn't clueless either. He spent the next few hours with a laptop, a red pen, and the HOA bylaws spread across his kitchen table like a crime board. And the more he read, the clearer it became. Karen had no real authority. She wasn't on the board. She wasn't elected. She wasn't even appointed by vote. She'd just been volunteering as the compliance lead, for years, acting like she ran the place. The HOA president? Moved out 2 months ago. The vice president? Hadn't attended a meeting in 6. Karen had seized the power vacuum like a vulture. But power without legitimacy? That's just noise. Jason grinned. He had a plan. First, he took photos of the car. Clean. Parked properly. No oil leaks. Yes, the bumper was scratched, but the replacement was already scheduled. Then he printed out the ticket dismissal. Highlighted the judge's quote. Finally, he wrote a formal complaint and request for hearing, to the HOA board itself. Not to Karen. Not to the generic inbox. But to every actual member listed in the charter, including one retired attorney who still lived in the neighborhood and rarely got involved. He attached copies of the bylaws marked up with notes. Then he waited. 3 days later, a reply hit his inbox. Dear Mr. Reynolds, thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. We were unaware of recent actions taken in the name of the HOA by Ms. A special session will be held next week to review the conduct and clarification of enforcement authority. You are welcome to attend and speak if you wish. Boom. Jason showed up early. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a space that hadn't been used for anything official in months. Only 5 board members were present, but the air was electric. And when Karen walked in, clipboard in hand, she looked furious. She hadn't been invited to speak. But that didn't stop her. As Jason calmly presented his case, photos, documents, even video clips from his Ring camera showing Karen inspecting his driveway, Karen sat in the back, arms crossed, eyes twitching. Then the retired attorney, a quiet man named Mr. Belton, cleared his throat. Let me be very clear, he said. According to our own charter, no one without elected or officially appointed standing may issue written warnings or initiate fines. That includes volunteer members. He looked straight at Karen. You've overstepped. Karen opened her mouth. But someone has to enforce the standards. The board's been inactive. I was just volunteering? Mr. Belton interrupted. Or pretending to be in charge? Silence. Another board member spoke. We appreciate your enthusiasm, Karen. But your actions have opened us to liability. Karen scoffed. This is ridiculous. That car has been a rusting eyesore for months. Jason stood up. Calm. Direct. My car was hit by a drunk driver. I've been repairing it myself. And the judge agreed. You called the city on me for tags I legally had an extension on. Then you tried to fine me for a cosmetic issue that doesn't even appear in the bylaws. The room was still. Then Mr. Belton closed the folder. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's a misuse of perceived authority. Going forward, no notices will be issued without board vote. Karen looked like she might combust. Jason? He looked like he just won the Super Bowl. But it wasn't over yet. Because Karen still hadn't learned her lesson. And Jason still had one more card to play. Karen didn't show up to the next HOA board meeting. But Jason did. So did half the neighborhood. Word had spread fast. Not just about the ticket. Not just about the judge. But about what happened in that clubhouse. About how Karen had been stripped of her imaginary badge. How she wasn't allowed to issue notices. How the board was finally waking up from its coma. Jason took his seat with quiet confidence. The board voted on a new resolution. All HOA communications, warnings, and violations must be reviewed and approved by the full board before being delivered. No more rogue clipboard missions. No more sidewalk surveillance. No more Karen. But the best part. The board agreed to rescind every violation Karen had issued in the past 6 months. Every bogus fine. Every citation. Every warning about basketball hoops, flags, flower pots, and unsightly vehicles. Gone. It was like flipping a switch. People started smiling again. Talking. Kids played on the sidewalk without parents nervously glancing out their windows. For the first time in months, the neighborhood felt like a community, not a prison. And Karen? She tried to fight back. She fired off a furious email to the board, threatening legal action, claiming defamation and emotional distress. But the board had receipts. Jason had receipts. And the judge's comments were a matter of public record. Then came the final blow. The HOA attorney, yes, they had one on retainer, sent Karen a cease and desist letter. It stated that if she continued impersonating an officer of the board, or took any action in the name of the HOA, she could be liable for civil penalties. Jason didn't even need to lift a finger. The law had done it for him. But he wasn't done having fun just yet. One morning, as he was washing his now fully repaired car in the driveway, he saw Karen walking her dog on the opposite side of the street. She wouldn't look at him. Wouldn't even glance in his direction. Jason dried off the rear bumper slowly, deliberately, right over the spot where the dent used to be. Then he turned to her and gave the most polite, deadpan wave imaginable. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. Karen sped up her walk like she'd seen a ghost. That afternoon, a letter appeared in everyone's mailbox. A new HOA newsletter, printed in bold, professional formatting. At the bottom was a short note. As of this month, all community violations must come directly from the board, with proper documentation. We appreciate everyone's patience and encourage neighbors to communicate respectfully. Thank you for helping us rebuild trust. No name was mentioned. But everybody knew. Jason folded the letter and tucked it into the back of his binder, next to the drop ticket and judge's statement. He kept them not out of spite, but as a reminder that standing up, even against someone as relentless as Karen, was worth it. That justice sometimes came not with sirens or courtrooms, but with quiet resolve, a little paperwork, and a whole lot of truth. Spring turned into summer. The dented car that once drew judgmental stares now gleamed under the sun. New bumper, fresh paint, tags updated. But the real transformation wasn't the car, it was the neighborhood. Without Karen's clipboard and constant threats, the place began to feel lighter. Neighbors waved more. Kids played longer. The Diazes put their basketball hoop back up. Mrs. Chen started her garden again, hummingbird feeder and all. Jason? He'd become something of a quiet legend. Not because he yelled or made a scene, but because he stood up. Calmly. With facts. With proof. With backbone. One evening, while walking his dog past the community park, an older man he barely knew stopped him. "You're the one who stood up to her, right?" he asked. Jason smiled. I guess I am. The man nodded. Appreciate it. We've all put up with her for too long. Jason didn't need a medal. That moment was enough. Weeks later, Jason received a letter from the HOA. But this one was different. It wasn't a violation. It was an invitation. The board wanted to appoint him as a neighborhood liaison, a new position they created to rebuild trust, communicate clearly, and avoid what they called Karen situations in the future. Jason politely declined. He wasn't looking to run anything. But he offered to help draft a community FAQ. Something simple. Transparent. Easy to understand. No legalese. No threats, he said. Just decency. And that became the tone moving forward. Karen? She still lived there. But she kept to herself. Her dog walked the same loop. Her voice was quieter. Her clipboard disappeared. Jason never rubbed it in. Because here's the truth. He didn't do it to humiliate her. He did it because people deserve better. They deserve to live without being harassed for parking their car, for hanging a flag, for planting flowers. They deserve to feel like home is a place of peace, not petty power plays. And maybe, just maybe, Karen learned something too. Because some lessons don't come from yelling. They come from a judge looking you dead in the eye and saying, "This is a complete waste of my time." They come from a neighbor walking up your path and calmly showing you the dismissed ticket. They come from watching the people you once controlled smile freely. Jason still drives that car. Not because he has to, but because it reminds him what it took to fix more than just metal. It reminds him that standing up for yourself, quietly, confidently, and with truth, can change everything.